I make the joke sometimes that it's not going to say what hotels or restaurants I worked on my tombstone. It's going to say that I'm a dad. Hopefully I'm a friend and I'm, a good parent, whatever it may be. But all of this is just sort of part of small pieces to the whole.
What I do is inconsequential. Why I do what I do is I get to shorten people's journeys every day. What I love about our hospitality industry is that it's our mission to make people feel cared for while on their journeys. Together, we'll explore what hospitality means in the built environment, in business, and in our daily lives. I'm Dan Ryan, and this is Defining Hospitality. This podcast is sponsored by Berman Falk Hospitality Group, a design-driven furniture manufacturer who specializes in custom case goods and seating for hotel guest rooms. Today's guest is an architect, design leader, and educator. He's a partner at an architecture and design firm, leading projects across residential, commercial, and hospitality spaces. He's received multiple architectural awards, including recognition for work in the public interest. He's a partner at 3877. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome David Shove Brown, or as I like to call him, DSB. Welcome, DSB.
Sir, thanks for having me, and I appreciate it immensely.
I'm so happy you're here as well, and I want all of our listeners to know that your partner, Dave Trotz, was also on many moons ago, and I remember one of the fondest memories I have about my conversation with him is we do an alignment call with every time I have a guest on. And I remember the alignment call with him, I was skiing and I sat down on the side of a hill, like on the slope, and I had the thing from my phone. I was like, oh, this is the new world. So that's number one. He was in the office working, I was skiing, number one. Number two, I've wanted to do this conversation with you for a really long time. And I know we've talked about it. But what really was like the impetus that I was like, it was the real light bulb that I was like, oh my God, I really need to follow up. We were in Minneapolis. It was an NEWH event. It must have been more than a year ago. I don't remember exactly when, but your practice is in DC, right? But you are very involved in NEWH at the leadership level nationally. And for those of you that don't know, NEWH is the hospitality network. And you were ferrying around a group of students from, I don't know, University of Iowa, University of Minnesota, University of wherever, maybe some from Chicago and the environs of greater Chicagoland. But you were taking time out of your busy day, running a company, growing a business, mentoring people, but mentoring these students and bringing them up and redirecting them. And you even brought me into it, which I found like very humbling, and say, hey, if you guys want to get into hospitality, talk to Dan Ryan, and he's got this podcast. But you were really taking so much time out of your way to impact these young people, their career path as they're kind of deciding which lane to get into. And to me, that just resonated and just warmed my heart. And I think all of us need to do a better job of that. So thank you for making me feel badly about myself. But one of my favorite channels from all the podcasts that I do is from students. And I got a ton of feedback after that group and that pod that you were bringing around. And I think that's a really awesome way to frame up this conversation, because that was its own kind of hospitality as well, right? Taking these young kids and impacting them in that way. But what does hospitality mean to you, Dave?
It's that exactly. It's, for me, hospitality it's a mindset. It's about humanity. It's about human connection. It's about being together, working together, trying to help each other forward. It's the manner in which we work. It's how we treat each other. So for me, it all comes back to the interaction of humans and humankind. And, so my interaction and involvement with students is just a small, portion of that mentality, that trying to just leave the world a little bit better than we found it. And, whether that's with students or, with colleagues in the office, or quite frankly, even our competitors or friends. So, we're constantly just trying to help each other out.
Which also brings me on to another thing that I'm just amazed by you and also many of your colleagues, and I won't name them all, colleagues and competitors. But one of the areas that I've learned so much just about myself, about entrepreneurship, is through this nonprofit organization called entrepreneurs organization. And within it, I get put into a forum. I've been in many forums, and it's this confidential support group for entrepreneurs. It's not just about, hey, how do I run a business? But it's, how do I deal with my business highs, business lows, personal highs, personal lows, family highs, family lows? Because as awesome as we may all look from these podcasts and being world facing, like, we also have all of our own struggles as entrepreneurs and just as people. And I think it's amazing that you've formed basically a mastermind with many of your competitors, but it's really about, I'll steal this from Shannon C, what she said, but it's really about fostering community over competition. And that, when she said that to me, I was like, oh my God, yes. And there's so many of us in these pods, but I think that many of us also don't know that these things exist and that we can all start our own. So tell us a little bit about that, because again, it's all about impact and sharing and shortening others' journeys.
My business partner, Dave Trotz, is really sort of the mastermind of this whole thing.
Don't give him that much credit.
All right. So this was my idea from the start. No one else was involved. We realized, so we're hitting our 15th birthday here in a couple of weeks. And, when you start from just two folks in your kitchen, you very quickly realize how much you don't know. And that's not even talking about the stuff outside of architecture and design. That's just within our realm. And you start to realize simple, writing proposals, sheets, how do you, put offer letters together, things like that we're doing all the time, that we realized it'd be really awesome if we could share this with our peers and talk about it with our peers. And so put together a group, and I guess there's probably 15 or so firms across the country. And we, they're sort of similar size, maybe a little bit smaller, maybe a little bit larger, but it's really, we try to do, a quarterly call and get together at different events just to sit down and use it as an opportunity to say, okay, what are you dealing? What do you see? What are you going through? And then sometimes we'll even kick it back to, okay, we're working on a proposal. We'll pick up the phone and call one of the other principals and say, hey, here's what we're seeing, cost wise or timing wise. What do you think we're in the right ballpark? Do you think we're too high, too low? And use it as a sounding board. Oftentimes you're working in this vacuum and you have, some idea what's out there, but it's really helpful to have that, other set of eyes and ears to give you some feedback. So, and it just makes life way more fun when you go to, conferences and I just did a panel at HD last week, and, 3 out of 5 folks on the panel are in this group, and it's like this, it's just a conversation. It's not, this very formal, you're just talking. And for us, it has made a world of difference.
What I appreciate so much about that is, okay, yes, I'm trying to furnish hotels. You're trying to design hotels. Our clients are trying to build hotels. But at the end of the day, in this business, and I would say other business to business businesses, you're not going direct to consumer necessarily, but it's all about that relationship. It's all about considering that relationship for the spaces that you're building as well. And also, I love how you said it's like you're in a vacuum, because so much of being an entrepreneur is having a vision and trying to figure out how to get there. But one of the most daunting things is that idea of a vacuum. And oftentimes you just don't have a frame of reference, and you have to take a leap of faith. And I also want to share with my listeners that in our alignment call, I found out that your dad was a Green Beret. Now, I always had this image of Green Berets, obviously they're special forces and really amazing humans at what they do, but the Green Berets in particular, one of their specialties, and I'm not an expert, is they go into a country or a place into a vacuum. They talk to the locals, they create factions, they train them, and then they make the sum of their parts, or the whole becomes greater than the sum of their parts. And to me, that was really interesting, because all these little threads that I'm hearing from you, it seems look, you're not a Green Beret, but it's the same kind of thing. You're trying to build these bridges to a place that you have an uncertain outcome. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on that and see how you can connect those two.
To continue, like you said, filling up the thread. So my father went from his military career into private security, and then, several steps, and ended up in executive search. And for lack of a better term, headhunting. And so it was through conversation. And my mom, had a bevy of different careers, a lot of which revolved around people and the interaction of people. And so it became very evident to me very quickly that networking, business development, even just going to a random cocktail party and having conversation, it's not human nature per se. You've got to practice it. It's so, as we go back to that comment you made early on about working with students, I generally start off every conversation with the students of, look, you need to learn how to talk about something besides politics and the weather. So here's your opportunity to practice some of that, which is why, okay, let's go, as we're walking around an NEWH trade show, let's look for some familiar faces, some faces that I know that are supportive and helpful. And so as as I approach life, a lot of it is that I make the joke sometimes that it's not going to say what hotels or restaurants I worked on my tombstone. It's going to say that I'm a dad, hopefully I'm a friend, and I'm, a good parent, whatever it may be. But all of this is just sort of part of small pieces to the whole. And so that's the thread for me of these human connections. And I I'd really love to see our entire, firm share cohort be successful. I'd love to have 15 firms that are, all doing great work and that are all really um, you kicking ass and taking names for lack of a better description, just because that's who we are. And that's, I think, what's really important about our industry is that support. And that for me, that started early at home.
Congratulations on your 15-year birthday or anniversary coming up. I'm that's quite a milestone, number one. Number two, for all those people out there that are thinking of starting a business, it's a scary thing to do. And I think 80% of all new businesses fail after the first year. And then after the 2 years, it's even more. And you're lucky to have such an awesome partner and have such a great team in DC and New York. And where are your other offices?
Just DC and New York for right
Just
now.
DC and New York. Okay.
I'm gonna start one in the Mediterranean, but that's gonna be a few years
Ooh.
off.
But taking that entrepreneurial leap and building a team and going through um, financial crises, COVID, you name it. What's something that you learned along the way from the networking? Did you network? And I'm putting network in quotes for those of you who are listening. Was that something that you knew how to do right from the beginning, or was that like a learned practice that you developed as an entrepreneur?
If the answer is yes to all of the above, I think, through my career before the firm in academia and with other firms, networking always had this sort of underlying ideal of sales. And I wanted to flip it a little bit, and Dave and I have flipped it a little bit to it's really relationship building. And, we have clients now that we've been talking to for 10 years that we're just doing our first project with, just because you're building that relationship, you're building trust, you're building that ability to have conversation. Oftentimes when we start a project, it's, look, something is going to go wrong. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. And we want to be the people that solve it. We're not, we're not in the industry to point fingers and to blame and to say who's going to pay for this or what have you. Yeah. And those are all pieces to the greater part of fixing it. At the end of it, I want to be sitting and having a beer with my clients, talking about stories from the project. And that just comes from the relationship building. We know that over 70% of our work comes from return client and direct client referral.
Wow.
And so for us, the biggest sales pitch is just doing good work and making sure that we do drawings that are as tight as possible, that are as complete as possible. And you also being vulnerable to say, yeah, we missed that. That's on us. We're going to fix it and we're going to move forward. But, we're trying our damnedest and we're a part of the team.
So I've been in a sales / business development / I like relationship building capacity for more than 20 years now. And what's interesting, something you said really struck me in the sense that there's some people that you've been building a relationship with 10 years. or for 10 years, and you have yet to do a project with them. And I find that there's some, as I'm getting close to 20 years, that I haven't. And what's interesting, it's taken me 20 years to figure out that I could say, look, we've known each other for a long time. Can I ask you a question? How can we work together? Like, what am I missing? And then
Mhm.
just being quiet and learning so much. But so much about that relationship building is just being patient and taking that long term view that, hey, if you build it, they will come. How do you balance your patience, but also the need to feed your offices and your team and just keep it all going?
I think through that honesty that you were just talking about is having the conversation of, take COVID, for instance. At the beginning of COVID, the one of the first moves that we made was we just started calling existing and past clients even, and just saying, "How are you? How are you doing?" Forget the work thing, forget the project, forget your, whatever we had done for you. How are you doing? And having an honest heart to heart conversation, putting, you know, health, happiness, and welfare all above a building or above brick and mortar, and using that as a philosophy to move forward. So yeah, I mean, sometimes you have to have the honest conversation and say, tell me why we didn't get selected for this job. We worked on this proposal, we worked really hard. What was it? Sometimes it's calling before the proposal and saying, hey, here's what we're thinking. Can we just talk through where we are and make sure that we're sort of aligned on scope and what you're expecting to see? What I've realized in the last 14 years, 11 and a half months is, and it's taken a lot, direct is good and listening is better.
Mm.
So asking the question and absorbing what's said to you so that you can, not just check the box that you talk to the client about why we didn't get the job. No, let's really learn from it, truly understand what we're doing so that we can become a better partner in the future.
So, okay. So if, as we're talking, we're getting these different buckets to come up, right? So there's this idea of patience, um, community over competition, um, the idea of networking, also mentoring and engaging in just different organizations that maybe is not like a direct one-to-one, right? But you're actually helping develop the industry and the newcomers into our industry. If you were to look at those 3 or 4 buckets I just laid out there, what presents the biggest challenge to you in the seat that you sit in?
A balancing them all. I mean, because then you throw in too that, I I got a teenage daughter at home who I'm teaching to drive, and therefore I have high anxiety. No, so trying to balance all those things and keep each one of them moving forward. So, saying, okay, now's the time I'm putting on my NEWH student relations chair hat, and we're focused on the students for this one. And I'm going to take that and run with it for the next few hours. Okay, now I'm going to shift to this thing in the office. I've learned sometimes the hard way about trying to balance all of those things and realize, what's the hierarchy in terms of I need to, complete some sort of task that I can hand it off to the next person and they can run with it. They're not sitting around and waiting, um, while still sort of seeing the big picture. So, working with students is awesome because hopefully at some point, those whatever the half dozen students that I walked around when I saw you, that, you know, they're going to apply for a job and they're going to look back and go, okay, I met this guy, Dan Ryan. Let's reach out to him and see who he knows in Dallas or and it's connections so that then that whole thing then splinters outwards and they help the next person. They help the next person. As you're looking for hires and you're looking for teams, um, quite frankly, some of the best people that we've ever had here are contacts through our quote unquote competitors that,
Mhm.
maybe somebody's moving to the area or, somebody's spouses. And when people understand who you are and what you stand for, I think that is a great selling point. And the balance of all of those buckets, as you call them, is really important that, we're going to support, young designers. We're going to support, who are in school. We're going to support young designers who are at the firm. We're going to support, folks that are a little more seasoned that want to, continue to climb the ladder. So all of that is they're not every day there's a disproportionate of which one is more equal than other. All pigs are created equal. But trying to balance that out and say, okay, I've got X amount of time in a week. How do I maximize it? I
So,
work like hell to like, yeah, we all do some work at home and on a weekend or, but I try so hard to really focus when I'm here. And then, when I get home, I can be husband and dad and friend and all of those things. So
and slam your foot into the passenger seat floor as a air brake.
take a lot of strength not to reach over to the steering wheel sometimes,
Yes.
but
I love balance because as entrepreneurs, dads, just as humans, balance is a difficult thing to achieve, right? Because
yeah.
oftentimes we're choosing to do something at the expense of something else and prioritization. But if you were to go back the 15 years, so like it's 2 weeks, we're 2 weeks before your founding
Mhm.
day, right? So we're in a time machine 15 years ago. How did you consider that idea of balance when you and Dave were trying to figure out what the next step is to create this company that you're in? And how has your relationship changed to maintain that balance over these past 15 years?
Dave and I went to college together. So we've been best friends for 30 plus, almost 35 years. As we, have started the firm and grown the firm, you know, I honestly think we've had like two arguments, maybe. And they're both probably my fault. But it's communication. I mean, we certainly COVID tested us, and tested our friendship. But what we did to level set was started to have conversations where at the beginning of the conversation we said, okay, what's the goal? What are we trying to accomplish? And you realize you have the same goal. Sometimes you just have a little bit different road to take versus somebody else. So, having that level set and realizing, okay, we're trying to go to the same direction, is really important. We started the practice, the middle of a recession. Awesome. When I had a newborn at home. Awesome. And yeah, who's now driving? That's all the gray hair. And part of a large part of my wanting to do this was to have the flexibility to go on those field trips or, go to the school play or be at the soccer practice or whatever it is. Cause I think back 100 years to when I was a kid and my folks did all that stuff. They managed to find me pre-cell phone. But being able to go to those things, I didn't want to miss out on any of that stuff. And so as we started talking about flexibility, was being able to work my time and sometimes not in a linear fashion, but in a fashion where things get done and they get done well, but I'm still able to do those things with my family. And we try to then translate that to the office and say, look, we want to support you. We've got a bunch of folks we have like this baby boy over a couple of years and it's awesome. Bring your kid to the office, bring your dog to the office. All of that is so important. And it's really sort of the heart of what we're trying to do.
Okay, so that's for you and Dave maintaining balance as entrepreneurial partners through the past 15 years. And you could actually even go back 35 years to when you're in college, right?
Yep.
Obviously, there's a track record, there's a trust. You just have a great foundation to work off and build off. And it's quite evident that you've been successful at doing that, no matter what the world throws at you. Now, if you think about, and I heard you did mention with attracting new people to come in and also sharing that idea of balance with them. But let's pretend you have a new project and it's fast and furious, you're kicking it off, or you're trying to, it's your first project with, let's say, one of those not 70% repeat customers. How do
Mhm.
you let them know that you're taking a balanced approach, but also hearing what's important to them and executing? Like pretend you're a new client that you haven't worked with before. How do you get them into the 70% bucket of as being a
Um,
repeat customer or client?
it's funny, Dave and I share an office, which I guess is odd. We tour people through and they're like, "You guys share an office?" We're like, "Yeah, we're still trying to figure out the best sound attenuation in the office, but we share an office." And you'll hear a lot of times from either one of us when we're on the phone, "I'm not trying to be the bad guy here." But we're trying to be honest with people. We're trying to tell them how much things how much construction costs, how much time things take, how long a permit takes. We're not trying to sugarcoat it to get the job and then get, bitten by it in 6 months or a year. We're trying to lay the groundwork for authenticity right from the beginning and say, look, here's based on our experience what we know. And here's the information that we bring to the table. You may not love it. You may not love, the cost of your project, but we're going to talk about it early and often so that we can address it and not just hope at the end of it that we come out okay. But it's having those honest conversations of what's the goal? How are we going to get there? And sometimes that comes around the family discussion, or I don't travel on my kid's birthday. Like, it's a weird thing. I don't want to miss that. And, I told clients on that, like, I can't make it, cannot be there. I can do the week before, I can do the week after, but this is something it's really important. And I will say, I think only once did I get pushback. Um, every other time people are like, absolutely, that, hell yeah, go do that. And I think it sets a groundwork for realizing that we're all people outside of the office. And I think it just makes for better work.
Okay, so now going on to the work, and obviously you're building these relationships with prospective clients, trying to get them into that 70% bucket of repeat business, which is amazing. And I think every business should be jealous of that or strive for that. Um, I want to pull on the balance thread again, because in your intro, I said that you have received recognitions for work in the public interest. Tell us about those projects and how those types of projects bring balance to the firm and then to yours and Dave's partnership as well.
I was in academia for, I guess, 7 or 8 years and created a class that was essentially a functioning architectural firm within a university setting. And, based on, and there's other universities that are doing similar, that are, sort of running nonprofits for individuals or groups that can't afford design services or don't know how to engage design services. And so it started by creating a course with a couple of colleagues and going after projects that were community-based projects that we could just do better. And so started with that and started to instill in our own students, like, this is important. Yes, having a job is important. Building a library for an elementary school is really important. You think about what that was like when you were a child, as that sort of escape of reality, going to the library and sitting in that disgusting vinyl beanbag and reading a book for a period or what have
Yeah,
you.
but it had a
It,
certain soothing and quiet to it that I loved, you know?
absolutely, like that sort of cocoon that wrapped
Yeah.
you, and while you were sitting there, and those moments that are really important. When Dave and I were in school, we had just amazing professors that really truly cared for who we were as people and the work that we were doing and the bigger picture of architecture and design and giving back. And so trying to keep that going, and it doesn't always work. Sometimes it's a matter of, look, we don't have time to volunteer at this. We can make a donation or we can do something, but even during COVID, we would have, the standard Zoom happy hours that I think every company did. And we had a lot of time where we would say to each other how, yeah, it sucked, but we were still lucky. We were for the most part healthy and happy and, moving forward, and we were a lot better off than a lot of people. And so we tried to just continue to remember that. And it just helps keep things in perspective. Yeah, what we do is important. It's not the end all and be all to life.
Hey, everybody. We've been doing this podcast for over 3 years now. And one of the themes that consistently comes up is sustainability. And I'm just really proud to announce that our sponsor, Berman Falk Hospitality Group, is the first within our hospitality industry to switch to sustainable and recyclable packaging, eliminating the use of styrofoam. Please check out their impact page in the show notes for more info. If you use that datum of balance again, is there an experience over the course of your career or since you went and started on your entrepreneurial journey where that idea of balance or working on something to achieve balance changed the way that you approach architecture and design now?
I think one of the things that I talk about with students and I talk about with our team is mentorship, is having a mentor or having multiple mentors that can help guide. So, I have a couple of mentors. Dave and I have a couple of mentors for the firm that we look to. And a couple of years ago, I lost one of my mentors who was a dear, dear friend. And that to me it was strange because I found out I just boarded a plane and I really struggled thinking, oh my God, who's going to be my mentor? Like I got a job opening. What's going to happen? And it took me several days to realize instead of trying to replace my mentor, of trying to be that person for the next designer. And so I have this, once a year or so, I write my Jerry Maguire-esque email to the office when I have some sort of brain dump. But, being able to say, look, guys, I'm here. I've got some experiences. Some of them are really good. Some of them are bumps in the road, but I'm here to talk. I'm here to mentor. I'm here to help. And so that opened up a lot of really great conversation, sort of a pivotal event. I think, as we've grown and brought in new people, it's hard when you start a practice of thinking, well, how are you going to end it? What's your succession plan? You don't talk about succession plans when you're, just starting. But, we started to hire people and we just have such an awesome group of humans here. And from day one, we knew that we wanted to have the firm continue, which is why there are no names on the door. So, as we started to hire and bring in really talented people, starting to let go was a really hard thing to do. It's a really hard thing for, I think, everybody in our profession, but letting go and letting some of the newer folks really take over and run with things, that's been so pivotal to our growth because I'm not micromanaging and going, let me see that document. No, just run with it. Go.
How do you think mentoring has helped you learn how to let go?
Mentoring is giving people guidance, but not telling them how to do it. The old teach them to fish. Getting people to realize that making a mistake is okay. Remember teaching, when your kids started to color in the coloring books and, there's a moment when it goes from like mad chaos to trying to stay within the lines. And there's that time when they go out of the lines and it's like, oh no, broke the rules. And you go, no, man, breaking the rules is the fun part. Like it's okay to screw up. Now make it into something. And so mentoring encourages people to learn and grow, but also screw up and make mistakes and brush it off and move forward. We are not perfect, man. Like it's okay. it's okay to screw up and to stumble a little bit, and you brush it off and you go, well, I'm not going to do that dumb mistake again.
Mm.
I'm going to learn from it and move forward. So, mentoring is just sort of guiding in a direction and letting, letting that person go and start to create their own way of looking at the world.
I appreciate that change in thinking of it's always amazing how you get bad news or not. I don't know about you, but like I always get bad news like right as I'm boarding a plane and I can't leave. And then I just kind of have to sit there with it. But I have really, that just happened to me leaving Vegas also. It's crazy. But last week, but if there's something about that sitting that causes us to like, it's almost meditative, sit with ourselves. But the shift that you had of, oh, who's going to be my next mentor, to in a way paying it forward, not in a way, clearly, okay, I'm going to pay this forward and take everything I learned and apply it to others. But I also find that many people, as much as they want to mentor or be mentored, there's a speed bump there. There's some friction point, and they don't know how to take that first step or ask. In your experience and from your feeling, what's the best way to start being a mentor or asking to be mentored?
I think it starts by finding people that have similar attitudes and similar philosophies. And I don't mean, design styles or things like that. I mean, just the way in which people look at the world or look at the way that they work and the way that they treat their teams and the way that they treat the people around them. And starting there and it's a very, it's humbling to realize that there's so much we don't know. And, finally being able to raise your hand and ask for help, um, I think is a hard thing to do. But when you do it, you realize how much further you can go. So, being able to say, okay, I'm pretty good at what I do. How can I do it better? How can I be more efficient and more effective for my team and the people around me? What are the things that I can, and your mentor doesn't always have to be the older version of you. You can learn from people of all different ages and philosophy. It's amazing what you can learn if you just sort of shut up and listen.
And that's where I wanted to go, because oftentimes there's a formal mentor relationship corporately in some corporations, and it's, you kind of have to subscribe and commit to a multi-year thing. But there's also just getting involved in your local trade organization, or in the case for you, the national NEWH platform, and mentoring all of these students. But where I wanted to go with it was when I saw you like the mother goose with all the goslings in like in tow, right? And that's really what it was. It was, and there was such a, like, I could see your heart in what you were doing there, right? And bringing them around. What do you learn from all the goslings, right? What do you learn when you're in that situation from the people who I like to call it rookie smarts, but in that case in Minneapolis, what did you learn from that instance?
It's so awesome. I mean, you travel a lot, so you do the same, where you get to go and meet new people and see new places and interact. And that to me is the best part of it. So hearing the stories of people, I'm thinking back to that trade show, and, we'll go and we'll bring in students from some schools that tend to be a little bit more commuter based, that may be folks that are, this is a second profession, or, they took a gap or whatever it may be. And hearing those stories is just so fascinating to me, of how they ended up in this world of architecture and design. And man, I love that. I love chatting with people and just hearing some of their stories. And then quite frankly, having the follow-up afterwards, somebody reaching out over email or social media or what have you, and continuing the conversation. It's just awesome. I mean, this you don't need to talk about politics, but our country and our world was so incredibly interesting with people and their experiences. And I would love to just sit for hours and just hear what people's life stories are.
We moved to Connecticut in the pandemic from New York City, and we lived in Chelsea on 20th Street. And after we were here for a couple of years, I remember asking my daughter Annabelle, I was just saying like, "Hey, what do you miss the most about living in New York City?" And she's like, "Oh, Dad, I miss it how we'd be walking and you would just talk to random people on the street."
Hmm.
Now, it wasn't so much that I'm like some crazy guy that just wants to talk to anyone on the street. I feel like we can all learn from every collision that we have because each person is like has their own connection to the network of whatever the world or the universe is. And I just am genuinely curious. That's why I love doing this podcast so much. And as you were talking about that pod of, I'm just going to go with the Gosling metaphor, but the idea of some of those students who were commuter based, where they know that they want to get into architecture and design. They're missing out on a lot of that community because they're commuting. And then I can imagine when they come into this hospitality design world, this sorority or fraternity of it's all relationship and it's so kind of cozy that it must blow their mind. And so many people don't even know that this world exists.
Well, and I talked about this at the NEWH leadership conference. We did a student session to kick the whole thing off, and I was like, "You guys are going into a community that is tight, that is friendly," and I was like, "If you didn't notice when you came in that all the professionals are hugging each other, like that's who we are." And
Yes.
I think there is certainly an element to my family that's like, could we just go on vacation somewhere where you don't know somebody? Like, can we like not do all the dinner, because you just meet such really awesome people along the way. And I want to go to their favorite coffee bar or coffee shop. I want to go to their favorite restaurant. I want to hear all about these things. It's just, again, who our community is and what makes it really interesting.
100%. And now, as we're approaching your 15-year anniversary, um, and you're talking to your colleagues and your community and your mastermind that you've built, and what are you seeing? Is there a shared biggest need amongst you, your colleagues, and competitors right now?
I think we'd all like a little more certainty in the world.
Yeah,
I think there's just an exhaustion from uncertainty. Like I think universally we thought, okay, we're going to get through COVID and that'll settle down. Well, then there was another, it just sort of, so it's like, I sometimes feel like we're in some sort of boxing match where we're just spending all of our time, bobbing and weaving. And just, I think at some point we just want a moment to breathe and all collectively go forward. And, we spend time at some of our leadership meetings within the office, and we started off by saying, okay, we are only looking forward. The next hour is only how do we move forward and not looking back at, something that went sideways or, something that happened. We are only going to be forward facing. How do we do that?
yeah.
So I think it's just sort of an ideal of we're just kind of tired.
Before I was asking that question, so um, I I love the fact that you're at times just looking forward and looking to the future. But one of the things that I really enjoy doing also, once the dust has settled on something that went sideways, is this time machine question where it's like, okay, listen, we figured out whatever that was. We're on this new path. But if you had a time machine and you could go back to that moment before everything went pear-shaped, what would you do? What would you do differently? And then just be quiet and then hear how that goes. Because again, mentoring could be this really established and formal way of mentoring someone, but it can also just be a question and silence.
So I'm thinking of this conversation that there is no, I mean, certainly there are guidebooks for owning a firm. There are guidebooks for being a parent. But I have found myself more recently saying to people, including my child, what do you need from me? What is most helpful for you at this moment? Is it for me? I can solve it. Well, we can try to solve it. I can give you some advice, or I can just shut up and listen. What is it that is going to be most beneficial for you at that point? I think the thing that I wish, if I could go back, is relaxing on trying to fix everything, trying to solve it and trying to make it better. And quite frankly, being gentle with yourself and going, it's okay if you don't fix it today, or maybe tomorrow, or maybe it's, maybe you got kicked in the teeth with something, and going, okay, let's brush yourself off, give yourself a break, and figure out a way to move forward. And doing it in such a way, I mean, all of us beat ourselves up all the time, and we do it in places where, like you said, whether you get bad news or you get that, email that's somebody's angry, or, we always tend to go to the worst case scenario when it could just be that person had a really crappy cup of coffee that morning and just sort of, and so trying to be gentle and understanding, when you were talking about, missing living in Chelsea, my kid sometimes gets embarrassed by me talking to random people and doing that. But sometimes just holding the door for somebody, you have no earthly idea what they've gone through in their day.
Totally.
So they may be at that breaking point where somebody just offering to carry their grocery bag is like the biggest weight off of their shoulders. And so sometimes those little things should just be as much of a fix as listening to all of their problems and trying to solve it. So sometimes it's just be there.
Yeah.
Be present.
And also, and I, the one thing I can hold myself accountable to on a daily, weekly, monthly, annual basis is how many collisions I have with people. Right. And to me, every collision is a learning opportunity for myself and for the person I'm colliding with. And typically, especially in a relationship business, the number of collisions, I think, is like the best predictor of what the future may hold. Because again, we're kind of like writing our own script as we're doing this. You didn't 15 years ago, 14 years, 50 weeks ago, you didn't have a script. You were just doing it, on a wing and a prayer with Mr. Tots. I mean, it's amazing to think about that. And, and then you can arguably say it's taken you 15 years to become an overnight success.
Yes, exactly. Well, I think the biggest miss we have was, I wish we wrote down some of this shit, quite frankly, that we went through. Like, and not just, not that we've had it any harder than anybody else, but just funny stories and stories along the way where you're just like, how did we pull that off? Or how did we, I have this vision back to, early on in COVID when, they were talking about all these PPP loans. They didn't know how it was going to work, and nobody really knew. They just knew it was going to go through banks. That was all the information we had. So Dave and I had this idea of sort of buckshotting the system. So we had a day where we were bunny hopping each other to go to different banks and open accounts in the hopes that one of these banks would have. And so it was him in his car and me on a bicycle going through Washington, D.C., going, okay, I'll meet you at this bank. We're going to sign, we're going to deposit $100. We're going to go to the next bank and deposit $100. And yeah, we lost a bunch of money and because we didn't keep it in there long enough or whatever. But, it was just one of those things that as you look back, you're fighting for your company, but it was just kind of a funny day of doing, anything and everything to make it work.
Yeah, it's like it's a whack-a-mole, right? You don't know, and you just kind of have to be inventive with your time. Um,
Yep.
okay, so 15 years is an incredible milestone. Congratulations. And
Thank you.
as you are in the exercise of only looking forward in this moment, what's exciting you most about what you see looking forward?
Um, we are getting more exciting projects every year. We are doing them with greater efficiency and greater design at the same time. So doing things really well and our teams working together, but also having clients that are letting us be creative and push that. So for me, it's looking out at our team and where they're going and where they're taking it, is just so awesome to see, and starting to see just the depth of the team's portfolio and our list of clients. It's, yeah, we've done some interesting smaller projects, and it's fun to see some larger ones and projects across the country and even internationally now starting to open up. It's a fun ride, and it's really remarkable. I said this at the panel last week that I am so honored and humbled that we have 40 plus people that work here that have put their trust in us as firm leaders to say, okay, these guys are the guys that I want to partner with, that I want to work with, that yep, we're not big and we're not, as nuanced as some other firms. We're still, working on systems and things of that sort. But we have people that it's amazing. They're like, yeah, I want to be a part of it. I want to do what you guys are doing, and doing it in such a way that it's really enjoyable.
Yeah, and I think a lot of that, and I get this from you and Dave as well, it's that entrepreneurial, creative, and curious mindset. Because in
Yep.
essence, I love how you said there's some that might be more nuanced. To me, what that means is what you're not, and which I think is amazing, is just it's like you're in startup mode every day, right? Every day
Yeah.
is a new opportunity. Every day is a new collision to learn from someone. Every day is a new day to try and drive to 75 banks to get ahead of the line. Like it's unscripted and exciting. And I love the fact that you and Dave are paying that forward by impacting others. So
I still think that we're a small firm for some reason. Like we're a startup firm of, two of us in a kitchen. I still to this day think that way. And it's, you know, sometimes people are like, you guys are 40 people. What? You're not small. And you go, yeah, but my brain, I don't want to get to the point where I don't know everybody that works here, or I don't know about their families or their pets, or, that's the relationship that's really important, because it starts here and then it goes to our clients. It goes to the people with whom we work. It goes to our consultants and our vendor partners and all of that. And it makes things just a lot more interesting and a lot more fun. I look at, some of the outings and dinners and things you do throughout the year and at conferences. And it's really just hanging out with your friends and the people that you like being around. It's not, you're not on trying to sell, 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 sell. You're just having conversation. You're just this. You're just hanging out with a friend.
and I also want to share with you and the listeners. I don't know if I told you this, but I got this. I developed this new CEU. It's called Case Goods 101, and I did it for the first time, the official one where you get the certificate and everything with your team in your conference room. And it was the first time in 20 something years that I did a lunch and learn, and the lunch didn't show up. And it was it was awesome. And everyone was very open-minded. Sophie really helped out and got everything there. So they all got the lunch at the end. But it was just so humorous to me. And I was able to laugh with everyone in that room. And it meant the world. I also was like, I know I was using a goose as a metaphor before, but it was like the duck trying to keep calm, but my feet were swimming so fast underneath,
Well, I make that analogy all the time, all the time. And yeah, again, it goes back to like, something's going to go sideways today. What is it? Oh, lunch is late. That's the worst thing that's going to happen in our day. I think we'll pull through.
Totally.
Understanding hierarchically what the important pieces are. Some of the team joke with me because they'll come and they'll be like, we have a problem. And they'll go immediately. Now, some of the more seasoned folks will be like, no, nobody died. Okay, cool. Let's solve it then.
We're not Green Berets. Nobody died.
Yeah.
This has been wonderful for me. Congratulations on your birthday. And if people wanted to learn more about you or connect with you or 3877, what's a good way for them to do that?
Definitely go to the website, check out the work and see what we're doing and shoot me an email.
Awesome. Thank you. I appreciate you. I appreciate your time. I appreciate your mentorship. I appreciate your leadership. And I look forward to keeping the conversation going.
Absolutely. I cannot thank you enough for this. This is awesome. And it's just, we've talked about it for a long time and it's fun to do it and just hang out.
Thank you. And thank you to all of our listeners. Without you, we wouldn't be here talking to DSB and learning more the other side of 3877. Although we'll have to go back and kind of put it up next to Dave's one from a couple of years ago and see how it all works together.
Maybe you do one of those things like they have in talk shows where you have like one person in one sound isolated room and another person, like the dating game or like the newlywed game or whatever that, where you like ask the same question to both people.
Yes.
Let's see what we come up with.
I could become the new Chuck Woolery. It'll be amazing.
Yes. Wow. Did we just feed ourselves immensely?
Yeah. And it made me think of a really funny skit, which I won't go into right now, but thank you. And I appreciate you. And thank you to all of our listeners, and we'll catch you next time.